Hi, my name is Daniel Posney, and this is called Shifting Perspectives. And the topic today is about how to do your work. And that's a phrase that kind of is thrown around a lot when you are living a more authentic or otherwise known as spiritual life. And people kind of say it kind of judgmentally sometimes, and sometimes we just say, well, maybe I should just do my work. And doing your work means kind of looking inside yourself. Another word for it is self inquiry, personal growth. But when you just say we need to do some work around this, it's just kind of this internal inquiry about what's going on, not necessarily mind, but a lot of it is about how you feel about something, what emotions it's bringing up. So when you hear someone say, got to do my work around this, it's not about getting harder. It's not about getting more intellectual about it and getting smarter about it, which is what we normally do. We get harder, we get more conditional, and we say, well, instead of um, wanting this person in our life, this maybe we have a narcissist in our life, and our normal work is, well, we just got to get that person out of our life, that kind of thing. But doing the work says, why is this person in my life? What's going on here? If I want to feel more empowered, more in control of my life, I got to look at what my part is in all this. And that's a really, sometimes it's the toughest work you can do, is to say, I have a part in this. How I know that someone abused me or suppressed me or did whatever it is that they did to me, but somewhere in there, I could work on something in myself. And I'm not saying that when you have someone attacking you or something that you brought that on. I'm saying that how can I change my vibration so that I'm not a target for that? Or how can I shift the reality that I'm in so that I'm not in the same frequency of that? It gets kind of etheric when we start talking that way, but I'm going to go more into that a little bit. So what I hear a lot from people is when I start doing a discovery with someone, a lot of it is, wow, that makes so much sense. Oh my gosh, how come I wasn't told that years ago when I was in therapy for 10 years? So there's some things that are discovered about certain patterns and beliefs and the environment that you were in that just kind of opens things up, and you say, wow, I can see how that. And then there's this compassion piece that your abuser or your suppressor, your oppressor, that there's some compassion in there, and that really kind of opens the door to your own healing. So but after that's done, after the discovery's done, okay, I realize that I'm not really comfortable with people or relationships because of this kind of thing. Now what? Now what do I do with this? Do I just continue on doing the best to protect myself, or to set more and more conditions? Well, I believe that once we get to the end of our lives, one of the questions that we're going to ask ourselves is not that did we protect ourselves, because you died anyway. Did I open myself? Did I really open myself to all experiences? Did I open myself to love, to being loved? I think that's the question that I'm going to ask myself as I let go of my last exhale. Did I really live? Did I really live everything? Was I present in every moment? I think that's what I'm going to be asking myself. So, how do you fix what it is that you found out about, what it is that you know is the reason for your suffering or your pain? Maybe you found out what the emotional cause is to your illness. Okay, now what? Now you can start to live better, treat yourself better, eat better, exercise, and those kind of things. But internally, what can you do? So I'd like to kind of go into that. The first part is about peeling away, and I kind of I see that as like we peel away these layers of conditioning that have been layered on top of us. So when we were a little baby, we didn't have any layers because we didn't have any experience of the world. And then even through um, uh, benevolent circumstances or good feeling environment, still things can be twisted and distorted and make it into something that doesn't feel very good. You might get the wrong impression about someone, or You might not be invited to the little kid's birthday party, but not because they didn't like you, because they just forgot, or they didn't have your number or something. And then that plays into your mind, and your mind will distort that into some belief about yourself. So the first part is peeling away the layers of what you believe to be true. I'm not lovable, I'm not worthy, I'm not tall enough, I'm not skinny enough, all those kind of things that play into your psyche and your personality. And I like to think about, like, if okay, if this is true, if this is really one of my limiting beliefs, could I take this to court, the court of emotional trauma, and have the attorney on the other side who's really working the best for you, but really is kind of litigating your ego. And he's saying, isn't it true, Daniel, that you do love yourself? Isn't it true, Daniel, that this was all brought on by this one little instance that you thought that people didn't like you? Isn't it true, Daniel, that you were embarrassed because you had a zit on your forehead in seventh grade and then you shut down and that led to this? It would just be kind of this really factual, if this is true, let's look at this. And then it might come to the end where you would say, isn't it true, Daniel, or whatever your name is, isn't it true that all of your problems have been fostered and birthed by your own mind, not by you, but by your mind? Isn't it true that you've never really been able to trust your mind? Isn't it true that your mind makes up things inside of itself and gives that to you as your reality? It's like once you kind of get that little litigation, that truth, that factual information, all the stuff that isn't factual, all the stuff that isn't true starts to fall away, and you start to let them go. So I kind of got myself to many times where I'd say, you know what, this is bullshit. This idea that I've held on for so long, this isn't true. So little by little, you start to kind of, I don't know, you kind of walk with your chest out a little bit more, your back gets a little bit straighter, your voice gets a little deeper, your clarity of thought and speaking gets clearer, because you're not just trying to please everyone. You're actually in this for that, you know who you are more, and your boundaries are stronger and all that. So it just becomes this lightning, lightning of self. Like you become lighter and lighter and clearer because of, you're not dragged down with this old beliefs. And there are stories out there of people getting that done in an instant, but I haven't been one of those people. But it's just been kind of a journey over, so far, 22 years or so, just letting go of those things and really looking at them. So it's kind of like something would happen, I would get a normal reaction to it, and then instead of just keep on reacting and closing down and conditioning and putting on this mask of personality to protect myself, really, instead now I get a little reaction and I look at it and I say, okay, what is going on here? Like, it's, instead of just kind of not looking at it and just going forward, now I kind of turn my attention over to this mind. This is where my mind sits, sort of. So I kind of turn my attention to my mind and then I question it. I kind of put it on the stand and I say, hold on a second. This smells fishy. What's going on here? This doesn't feel good. This has the flavor of fear going on here. So it's kind of like I put myself in a new position of uh, not to be bullshitted. And from that place, I get to look at my own self and not speak from my own mind, and not back up my mind with all of its thoughts. Now I'm not, this is not my best friend here that I'm looking at. This is someone that is not, doesn't have my best interests at heart. It has its best interests at heart. And that's what I kind of need to kind of learn is, if that's true, then what it tells me, I need to question, I need to litigate a little bit. So that's one thing. It's just a process of peeling away the layers and looking at things clearer and watching your own reactions. It was years ago that I read this pretty famous book called Be Here Now by Ron Dass. And it's a funky book, it's pretty thick and it's got these pages that are made out of this brown paper bag material with all these swirly symbols and goddess symbols and kind of sexual references and just really kind of hippie kind of stuff. And when I first read it, it was just kind of out there and I didn't really get it. But the second and third time that I read it, it's kind of like I moved my frequency into that frequency when Ram Dass wrote that book, and I could really understand it. I could relate to it. And one little story in there that he tells about doing your work and watching your reactions and that kind of thing. He tells a story about, like, imagine a guy walking down the street on the sidewalk, and walking up the other way is another guy, and they both look at each other wrong or something, and they bump each other's shoulders, and then guy number one punches guy number two, and this happens every day, and they both get more and more into this thing, and he keeps on punching this guy, and then guy number one goes, I am not the master of my emotions, and he decides to do something different. And he goes in there, sees the guy, they bump shoulders, and he thinks about saying, so he thinks about not reacting, but he still punches him. And he's like, oh shit, man, I didn't follow through. But then the next day happens again, and he thinks really hard. I'm gonna do this the right time, and then he bumps shoulders and he punches the guy again, and every day he just does his best to do it, and then he starts uncovering things about himself. He starts looking at himself and start to having more awareness about his thoughts and his reactions, until finally that one day he bumps shoulders with this guy, and he thinks about not punching him, and he refrains. He holds back, and he just looks at the guy in his eyes and maybe gets some, like a knowing, compassionate look, and then it's done. That's kind of the process. You screw up, you make mistakes, and you have your old responses, your old reactions, and then little by little you go, oh wow, huh, I had the same kind of energy that kind of affected me, and what would have deeply affected me in the past, but this time I got hold of my emotions, and I feel more powerful. I feel more empowered. And that's kind of the process. And it's kind of, you do that with every one of your reactions that make you feel unworthy, unloved, insignificant, not heard, all those kind of things. So that's the first step. The other step I want to put in there, this is a really important step that I haven't heard from anyone else, but you got to imagine, or invite you, thank you, Michael Hamilton, I invite you to consider that you're in your own holodeck, which is a room of frequency of consciousness in a time-space reality. So it's your own reality, and everything that's in this room, let's say it's this room is a frequency of consciousness in a holodeck. And everything in this room vibrates with a certain vibration of emotion. Let's say that we're in this holodeck in this room of fear and worry and blame and shame and betrayal and jealousy and all those things. So everything that I do in this room, in this holodeck, is going to be flavored with that. I cannot get away from it. And that's what I want you to consider, is that if you've been feeling these feelings of fear and worry and blame and shame, all whatever those negative feelings are, that everything that you do is flavored with that, because it's in your field, it's in your consciousness, it's in the room of your reality. Okay, so now what do we do? If I can't get myself out of this room, then what do I do? Well, now you imagine yourself in a hot air balloon, and that's what's keeping you kind of floating up and down. And sometimes you float really down into the muck of that room, and that day is a really crappy day. And then you float up, and it seems like you're doing pretty good, and then you go back down again. Now imagine that you look over the side of the hot air balloon that's keeping you there, and there are sandbags, and on the side of the sandbags it says limiting beliefs. So that whole concept kind of helps me to understand why everything is kind of flavored with this kind of feeling. My relationships, my job, my health, all those things are kind of flavored with this feeling. It's because I'm not kind of in this range of consciousness. I'm in this holodeck, is that everything is of that frequency. So imagine that you let go of these limiting beliefs, and you're going to slowly rise out of that frequency into a new frequency band. And what my wife Valerie says is, you what your what your old high was is your new low. What your old high was is your new low. So you just kind of shift up that frequency range. You just find yourself in a different place, and you're not more important person. You're just kind of living in a different consciousness, and can you totally relate to the old stuff. It's just that you have access to things that weren't in that room before. Now you're in a different room. You got different thoughts and ideas and beliefs and consciousness available to you. So that is a really important piece. If you can kind of put that into your mind, that whatever is coming at me right now, whatever I'm experiencing right now, is because I'm in the room of this. And if you've narrowed down in the previous step of what your kind of theme is, whether it's guilt and shame, obligation, people pleaser, whatever the thing is, that is what your flavor was. That's what your theme was, and that's what the holodeck was. So you take yourself, you heal and integrate those things, letting go of those limiting beliefs, and you kind of come out of that. Still, you'll still have trickling of that old theme. It's kind of natural. It's just the way the ego works. It'll try and trickle it up to you so that you have a reaction. But once you get more empowered with yourself, that stuff starts to go away, and you kind of see it directly, and it doesn't take you down. The other step is just awareness. It's not more analyzing. It's like you get to a place where you just really understand the whole picture enough, and that's why people say, "Okay, I got it. Now what do I do?" So it's just being aware of the scene. It's being aware of what's going on. Um, it's more like, look how I was spiraling up into this feeling great. Everything was doing, we were having this conversation, and it was just spiraling up. And then your mind took over, and it wanted to ask a question. So the answer isn't to answer this question that your mind has come up with, because that's keeping you in the same loop. You spiral up, and then the question comes, well, how long is this going to last? Or that wasn't greatest because of this. Your mind starts to try and take charge again. So the solution isn't to address the mind and comfort it and coddle it and, oh, it's going to be okay, it's not going to take as long as you think, all that kind of thing. It's more like, I don't need to answer your concern right now, because you're part of the problem speaking to the mind. I just need to sit in this awareness of where I was headed, this spiraling up of this juicy energy that was happening, and invite more of that in. So you start to invite that in, and then the mind just kind of drifts off to the side here. This is one thing that happens quite a bit, and when I'm in session, is we'll get to this epiphany and this beautiful realization. Awesome, life is changing, life is transforming, it's great. And then the mind comes in, and then the client goes, okay, I understand that, or I understand that, Daniel, but how long is this going to take? Or, it's just hard, so hard for me. And I'm supposed to respond to them, oh no, you're awesome. But I don't do that, because that just feeds back into the old pattern of that the mind is the one that needs to get the attention. So how I respond is that we don't need to address the questions or the concerns right now. Everything's going to work out great. What we need to do right now is just keep enjoying this. This is what's happening. You're shifting right now into this new frequency range. So that's the piece. Let's see, what else did I write down here? The awareness of a seemingly normal response, which is the mind engaging and reestablishing you as the master. So you can see if you can feel this, like, everything's spiraling up, and then your mind comes in and discounts what's going on here, or questions what's going on, and it tries to take over with, some concern or some question. And you go, no, you know what? I don't need that. I don't need this question answered. I am perfectly fine how I am right now, and this feels great, and I say yes to this. You assert yourself as the master, as the captain of your ship right then and there, And yeah, it might slip in different times, but that's your time of learning. And that's kind of the position that I needed to take in myself, instead of feeling like I was a victim and what am I going to do? And I'm the smart person. Why can't I figure this out? Into, okay, I'm learning. This is my learning. I use life as my learning tool. And it's how I feel about things, what it's making me feel, these old triggers. What do I feel from this? I feel insignificant. I feel people don't like me, or I have to do all these things so that people like me. That right there, that's the juice right there, is when you start to discover that. And you start to know yourself more. You start to know how your mind works, and that it's been working you. Once you kind of get that, you can go, oh, this is what life can be. You start to get this renewed love for life. So that's how to do the work. It's, to put it really simply, shit happens, some event or something is said, you get a normal reaction from it. Instead of just allowing your reaction to happen and going down that road, you pull yourself back into more awareness of what's going on here. What's the thought? Not worrying about why this person did this, or the details about how they were so mean and how could they do that. No, that's where the mind wants to go. Pull back into yourself, take a deep breath. Okay, how is this making me feel? Have I felt the same way that I'm feeling right now back in my childhood? Okay, I did. Okay, wow, this is an opportunity right here. Okay, so the work is, so making me feel insignificant. Oh yeah, I really feel that. There's this, like, this inner dialogue that goes on. And the work is, okay, I know what it is. Okay, now what are the beliefs that are inside of that whole thing? Start to let those go little by little, or all at once, or whatever you're comfortable with. And start kind of, you get to kind of reintroduce this new self to the world and see what shows up. And I'm inspired. This something someone said the other day, show me the magical. And that's kind of what I feel like. Once I've kind of removed the extra stuff, then I get to see what's magical, what life shows me now, what life shows me now. And you keep on showing up as just a different frequency. And that's the work, that's the process. It doesn't have to be this dive in with all of your emotions and crying, and although that's, cathartic too, but just living life and going through the inner process, the inner questioning, the inner inventory of what's happening with this. And after a while, it gets really simple, gets really easy. Like you can do it in 5 seconds. Well, yeah, yeah, I got that one. That one started to make me feel guilt. Okay, I got that one. Yeah. Okay, what direction do I go that dives right in and says, I'm going to do this because it feels good and I'm going to let go of the guilt. Okay, that's saying yes to this. So that's kind of the work. It's just really kind of going forward into something and seeing what emotions get kicked up. Any more than that, we got to go into a longer discussion, but I think it feels like a pretty good description of how to do the work. There is something called the work with Byron Katie, and that's all another way of doing the work. It's 4 questions. So you're kind of asking yourself, is that true? Is that 100% true? What does that make you feel when you are believing that that's true? What if you didn't believe that that was true? That's essentially the 4 questions. So, and then there's like a turnaround that you can have where, you believe that this person shouldn't have done this, or maybe the turnaround is that they should have done that kind of thing. And how does that make you feel? So there's all this, there's all this different ways of looking at it, but it's really self-inquiry is kind of the basic word phrase that kind of describes what's going on. You kind of inquire of yourself, really of your mind, of what the mind is training you to think. That's it. That's, I want to stop right there. Have a beautiful day. I hope this helps. I love you. Bless you. Thank you.